Hello friends, Jill here. Welcome back to Whispering Willow Farm. Today I'm going to dive into a topic that we get asked a lot. I receive several emails a week, Instagram messages, comments on here. So I'm just going to kind of dive into our story of how we started farming debt-free. Now I know this is not going to apply for everyone. Someone who is wanting to quit their job and like start a really big, profitable, functioning farm, I do know that taking out farm loans and things like that may be necessary. For me, those of you who know us know Nathan works a job outside of the farm. This is my job. So we had that, benefit of not needing my income to be our sole income. So with that being said, really just kind of figure out what works best for you guys. If this is something that you're doing with your spouse, or maybe you're wanting to quit your job and do, I don't think there's anything wrong with, farm loans to get started and things like that. However, Nathan and I agreed early on that we would not go in debt to farm. And it was one of those things when I was having this conversation with him, like, hey, I really want to do this. He was like, yeah, I'm totally for you, but I refuse to go in debt. And so we said, okay, what does that look like? At the time, we did not live on this farm. We lived at a previous property. We had chickens, a small garden. However, we were in a house that was at the very, very top of our price budget. Nathan worked at the farmer's co-op, not making a whole lot of money. I worked part-time at a job raising Charlie, and it just wasn't ideal, right? Like neither one of us had our peak jobs, if you will. We had a lot of money going out and not a lot of money coming in. Therefore, we found ourselves in a place where we were in a lot of debt. And it was like, okay, I have these dreams. I really want to farm. What we're doing is not working. What can we do? And you guys, we met with a financial advisor and we did some pretty extreme things. So I'm going to tell you what we did. However, I encourage you guys, sit down, figure out what your goals are. Figure out if you're okay with going in some debt. If you're not okay with going in debt, what that looks like for you. And just slowly chip away at your dreams and your aspirations to farm, to garden, to homestead, whatever that looks like. So for us, we went into a pretty intense Dave Ramsey program. We started selling a lot of things. Anything that we did not use regularly or we did not need, we sold. At the time, I had a Nissan Maxima that was paid off, but it was new. It was a nice vehicle. And someone had, our financial advisor actually, he was like, hey, you could sell your car because it's a really nice car and you could get a lesser vehicle, which to some people, even my family, some people scratched their head and was like, why would you get rid of a nice paid for vehicle to drive a vehicle that's not as nice? That doesn't make sense. But what we did is we were able to trade in my nice car, buy an older '04 Acura, get thousands of dollars back on that trade-in, and we took that and we paid off debt. And we continue to do extreme things like that. We ended up selling our house, buying the farm that we currently live in, which was an adjustment. I'll be honest with you guys. The house we live in now was a complete disaster when we bought it. I mean, it had 70 shack carpet, it smelled really, really bad. There was, layers and layers of wood paneling and wallpaper and linoleum, and it was just wild. And we just kept reminding ourselves, we're doing this for a reason. Actually, before we bought this house, we ended up getting out of debt, putting back a lot of money, doing that debt snowball, doing extreme things, which were no vacations. Nathan and I have actually never been on a vacation. We didn't go out and eat dinner for an entire year. Our birthday parties were really, really small family gatherings. Our Christmas, we had 3 gift rules. Each of our kids got 3 gifts, something they want, something they need, 4 gifts, something they wear, something they read. So we didn't have these huge elaborate things, but we knew that we were doing this to set our family up for future success, and we knew that that was going to take a sacrifice. And I can tell you guys right now, the hardest thing I think mentally is to be like, no. I think the hardest thing is to say no and to actually tell people your reasoning. So we would go to church and our friends would say, hey, do you guys want to come out and eat lunch with us? Or hey, do y'all want to come do this? And instead of being like, no, we'd be like, what, we're actually kind of on a really strict budget right now, trying to get out of debt so we can buy a farm. And then when you're open and honest with your friends in your community, they're like, oh, really? That's really cool. Like, you know, and they start giving their advice and their tips and things that they did. Nathan and I also gave each other an allowance, and we were each allotted money every single week. That way we didn't feel super deprived. If I wanted to go out and eat lunch, Nathan wanted to go out and eat lunch, I wanted, you know, a new shirt from the thrift store, whatever that looked like. You know, it's really a small amount. We got $25 a week. And I know that this sounds crazy, but we did some extreme things because we had some huge goals. I really wanted to farm. And I knew that we weren't in a place, and just working, you know, for 2 years to get out of debt and just be good again, I didn't want to put us back in that place when it wasn't necessary. Running a profitable farm is hard. Running a profitable farm debt-free is really hard. And so we figured out our goals. We moved into this house. We knew that it was going to be a sacrifice. We moved further away. We moved in a house that needed completely remodeled, but we kept telling ourselves, we're doing this to reach a goal, and it is going to be worth it. So I encourage you, whatever goals you're reaching to, just remind yourself, it is going to be worth it. This is going to be worth it. I also really encourage you guys to figure out what you absolutely need. Now, you think, you live on a farm, you need a tractor. You live on a farm, you need infrastructure. You live on a farm, you need this. I would really encourage you, figure out, is it something that you think you need, or do you actually need? While it would be very, very nice for us to have a tractor, I wouldn't have had to haul rock all summer by hand in my garden. There has been a time where we've had to pay someone to come out and like do some stuff because we didn't have a tractor. However, a tractor is not a need. It is something that we want that would help us out every once in a while. So even though it might have been nice to have around, it doesn't make sense to go into debt for us to have that. Now, same with infrastructure. We did have a small greenhouse on the property when we bought it. We did have to do some things to that. But the greenhouse that I'm currently in, we've lived here for 3 years, and I have saved enough money up over the 3 years, found that this was a big enough necessity now that it was worth putting money back and paying towards and paying on. However, I would have never bought this infrastructure had I not had the cash to pay for it. Why? Because it doesn't make sense. So what I had done is use the greenhouse that I had. There's a lot of greenhouses that you can buy that are cheaper kits. You can go to Harbor Freight, Grower Solution, Bootstrap Farmer. A lot of these places have inexpensive greenhouses. You could even build your own. I'm sure there's some sort of like PVC pipe, something on the internet you guys could find to create your own. And you can make that work to see if it is a big enough necessity that's worth investing a higher price point in. Now, the reason that I really encourage you guys not to put a bunch of money in infrastructures and equipment and things like that, because you don't know, your plans may shift, right? When you're farming and gardening and homesteading, plans always change. So I would have hated to move into here, go into debt, put up this nice greenhouse, and then decide I really don't enjoy the plant sales. It really wasn't as profitable as I needed it to be. So I ended up not even needing this size greenhouse. I could have started everything for my garden in our small greenhouse, and now I have spent, you know, over $2,000 on something that isn't even a need anymore. It is now just a yard ornament that I sometimes use. So I really encourage you guys, figure out your goals, what it is, work accordingly. Like, say if you don't even need a greenhouse. Say you have a space in your house that you can set up grow lights and grow racks. Maybe go that area. Not saying that you won't always. There are things that I do want. There are things that I'm saving money for that we want, but I just know I can still do what I need to do without making that investment right now. Raised beds, in-ground garden, if you're trying to figure that out, and raised beds are a bit costlier. If I could go back and redo it, I probably would have not spent the time and the energy I did on my raised beds. However, I love it. It is a beautiful space. For what I do as a market grower, growing for profit, selling to restaurants, it would have made more sense for me to put the time, the money, and the energy I spent on my raised bed garden into in-ground market style gardening, because I can get way more out of that space than I can my raised beds. It takes less money because it's in-ground. You're using the soil that's there and amending that. I wouldn't have had to bring in, you know, the trellises. I wouldn't have brought in the rock. I wouldn't have done anything like that. So I do think it's really important to kind of figure out your why and why you're doing this, what your goals are. Look at your garden through your goals. You know, I kind of, at the time, laid out my garden based off of what my goals were. My goals were grow food in a pretty space. now that I'm doing this, I realize the pretty space is wonderful. However, it's not really necessary, and I could have saved several $100s just going and growing in ground, which would have yielded me more, which would have executed what I wanted better, if that makes sense. Say your goals are animals. You want animals instead of building a chicken coop or buying a chicken coop, which is going to cost several hundred to thousands of dollars. If you have the space, maybe look at a chicken tractor with some poultry netting and just be able to graze them on the grass. It's going to be versatile. You can move it with you to your next property. It's going to cost less. Things like that, Nathan and I have learned the hard way. You know, we thought it had to be a certain way, and then realizing that it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. Another thing that we did a lot was reuse or buy used materials. Now, when we actually bought this property, we found a 20 by 50 greenhouse a couple hours from here. It was really cheap. It was $1,200, which you guys, if you're familiar with infrastructure price, that is really cheap. The kicker was we had to go and disassemble it and load it ourselves. So it was July when we did that. It is hot. If I could go back and recommend anything, it would be don't do that. Matter of fact, that greenhouse is still sitting back here. But we had the mentality, oh, if I can buy this used, put it up myself, it's cheaper, I'm saving thousands of dollars. And in theory, that would have been true. However, you do kind of have to know what you're doing and know how to put up a greenhouse and stuff like that. However, though, pots, I would, for a long time, reuse the same pots, or say I bought plant starts at the store, I would sanitize those well and use those well. Make sure that you take care of your stuff really well. That way you're not having to buy it year after year. I've also found that if I buy quality trays, they last forever. I've had the same bootstrap farmer trays since we've lived here now, so for over 3 years. They're in great condition. I take care of them. I move them out of the sun. You know, I store them in the herb room or in the shaded greenhouse and things like that. So spend the investment on those things, but take care of them so they last. And when you can buy used or reuse them. Same with your landscape plastic. There's been several times that we have pulled up landscape fabric to move somewhere else. We're buying one roll of that and just literally picking it up and moving it. Irrigation you can get pretty cheaply if you take care of it and you move, or you need to move your drip from one garden bed to another garden bed. Take it, reuse it, just take care of it. So when I say we farm debt free, I feel like I need to clarify this. We have a mortgage on our farm and we pay that. So the land is not paid for. Everything, all the infrastructures, everything that comes, you know, out of the farm or bought for the farm is paid for through the farm account. Now, if you're wanting your land to be debt free, I would encourage you that is a lofty goal. That is an amazing goal if you can do that. Save every penny that you can, every bit of money you make from the farm, stash that aside. But renting land, a lot of farmers do that. A lot of these big farms that you see, they don't actually own the land. They're just renting it, which makes sense. If you're not really tied to a place and you're not where you have enough money to go down for it, you know, to put down for it, or you're not in a place where that's feasible for you, renting land to grow on is really important. I just encourage you guys, make sure whatever money the farm's bringing in, put that back into the farm somehow. And for Nathan and I, we kind of drew the line. We were like, okay, we are no longer taking any of our money that Nathan works for at his job, and we're putting it towards the farm. If what I didn't bring in from the farm could pay for it, we simply realized we did not need that. So we really emphasized on plant sales. Plant sales we did in the spring every single year. That money kind of helped me, you know, get another layer of topsoil or compost put in the beds. We bought the rock with it. Whatever I needed, I set money aside to buy my seeds for the next year. The vegetables, you know, obviously these things helped me buy my trellises, my pruning tools, things like this. And so I encourage you, don't get overwhelmed with everything you don't need. You'd be surprised what you can farm with equipment wise. Very, very little. I have very few tools that I use. We have no big pieces of equipment whatsoever. If you already have those things, great. If you can buy them used, great. If you feel a need for them, great. But I don't want you guys to get in the mindset you have to have this to farm successfully, because 100% you don't. We were a profitable farm before we had the infrastructure. This is just going to help us be able to put out more product, put out more plants, grow more food. You can get by with a lot less than you think you can. So one of the nice things about getting out of debt and living a debt-free lifestyle is when you're farming, you're able to cut a lot of those costs for yourself, because essentially you're living a very sustainable lifestyle and you're living off the land. And so that was a huge deal for us. When we were evaluating our budget, I spent a lot of money on organic produce, organic food. And then I realized, oh, hey, I'm gonna go into a profession where I can grow my own. That excited me. That made me feel like I was, you know, cutting our budget in half, but then still doing and pursuing what I loved. And so that is another thing. If you're trying to figure out your budget where you can cut costs, figure out, can you implement that on your farm? Do you have the means to add that on your farm to where it makes sense? For us, the chickens, you know, we're going to be doing meat chickens in the spring, so that's protein. Then we have our laying hens for eggs. I grow all of our produce, which is primarily what we eat. So things that I don't grow a lot of is like our starches. Obviously we have potatoes we're going to do this year, which is typically when we do a starch, it's like a potato, some sort of fruit, something like that. So I'm growing some of that, but not a lot. So that is one thing that I just figure, okay, for the most part, I'm still gonna have to buy this from the farmer's market, grocery store, something like that. But then we just kind of switch. When I'm growing a lot of veggies in the summertime and the springtime, usually we'll cut out our starch in a meal and we'll just double our vegetables because I can provide that. So double veggies and a protein. And that's something that we think of. Most of our protein we buy in bulk. We got, you know, the half a cow, we got the pig. So our freezers are full. So what we're actually having to go to the grocery store for is very, very little, especially when those summer months kick in. If you're at a place where you have more space and you want to do meat chickens, you want to do meat rabbits, you want to grow out, you know, and feed out turkeys or whatever that looks like, be encouraged by that. You are actually saving yourself. You are actually being budget friendly, budget conscious on that, while also honing in your skills. You know, figuring out if this is a way for revenue for you in the future, whether you're selling your eggs, whether you sell your animals, you know, you're breeding them and selling them as babies, or whatever that looks like, you can figure out through the process while saving yourself money. Oh, maybe I can actually add this in to my farm and it can end up producing income and be profitable. So I know that I'm telling you guys my story, mine and Nathan's story, which looked kind of extreme. You know, we sold vehicles, we sold our house, we sold a lot of things. And when I say a lot of things, I mean, it was like we were selling guns that we didn't use, which was hard for Nathan. Selling my car was a hard decision. Selling our house was a hard decision. But we were committed to the end goal, and the end goal was to eventually be on a property where I was farming, doing this for my job, you know, and having it be profitable, like being known in the community as a farmer and one who is engaged in the community. That was really, really important to me. I didn't care if I was the farmer who had the most land and the farmer who had the fanciest this or nicest that. I could care less about that. I wanted people to think of Whispering Willow Farm and be like, man, that girl, she is like really involved in her community and she really does a lot for providing produce and vegetable starts and plant starts to our local community. That is what I wanted people to think of me. And I knew I didn't need the biggest tractor, I didn't need the biggest truck to do that. I just needed to get to a place where I did not have the debt that I had before and I could finally start eating away at that. So you may be watching this and you may be thinking in your mind, oh, well, I could get rid of this and I could sell this and I could start selling more of this to make money if this is really what's doing well for me right now. I'm sure your wheels are turning and you're trying to figure this out. I just want to encourage you guys, if maybe you're dreaming of having a farm, maybe you're aspiring of having a homestead, but you think, you know, yeah, we have the land, we have the house, I just don't have the extra funds to invest in all of this stuff. I want to encourage you, you don't have to. You can do this debt-free. You can have your farm be profitable eventually. It is going to take a while. We are 3 years into this journey and I'm just now sitting with you telling you that for the last probably year and a half, maybe, we've been a profitable farm. Until then, we've been working in the red. And that's okay because it's necessary. It's going to take time. However, 10 years from now, when all the stuff I have at our farm is paid for and I'm still not paying off on some farm loan, I'm going to be okay that it took me a little bit longer to get there. And so I want to encourage you guys, figure out what that is, figure out what things you can get rid of, maybe figure out if plant sales sell for you, really hone in and capitalize on that. If selling vegetables and starting some sort of farm stand is what really brings in income for you guys, capitalize on that. But I just don't want you guys to get discouraged. That's something that I just get asked a lot is, you know, I don't have the funds to do this. We didn't either. And look at us now, like we didn't have the funds to do it. We dug our heels in and did it anyways. I think it's really, really important to figure out your why behind it. Why are you farming? Why are you gardening? You know, why are you homesteading? Because that will be the drive. For me, I wanted this to be a career. I also wanted to teach my girls that they could do it. And anytime I got discouraged, anytime we had to tell someone, no, we can't go out to eat with them, every year our kids would ask us, hey, are we gonna go on vacation this year? And we had to tell them no. It was heartbreaking. but I knew that it was a temporary sacrifice for a long-term investment that was going to make sense. It was going to make my husband proud, make my kids proud, that was going to end up bringing income to where one day I could be like, hey, guess what, kids? We're going to go on vacation this year because we worked hard and we're going to do it debt-free. I can happily tell you that this is the first year Nathan and I have been married for 8 years. This is the first year we're taking our family on a vacation, and it has been so well earned, and I'm excited. And it's cool because we made those sacrifices to be able to get to a place where we are now. So I would encourage you guys, hang in there. You can do it. I am rooting for you. If y'all have questions, please send them down below. I know this wasn't as in-depth as it could be. It was just kind of telling you guys our story and our journey getting to where we are, things that work for us, tips that we did. Hopefully you guys can apply them. But thank you for hanging out with me today. I'll talk to you soon.